Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Cohn. I'm the Vice President of Broadcasting, Marketing, and Programs here at NCMA Boston. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Rick Phipps, Director of Compliance Services at CTP, Commonwealth Trading Partners. Rick, welcome. Thanks for taking the time.
Glad to be here, Adam. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Long story, unfortunately, as you can tell from the gray hair. But the pertinent parts is I've been working in export control for 25 years now. The first about 10 years was working on behalf of the State Department as a contractor, not as a Fed, helping set up export controls in other countries, and notably in Central Asia, but eventually all over the world. And it's the idea is to prevent the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, but all weapons that can destabilize regions and countries. And so essentially it was like adult learning of a very exotic kind, but we helped several countries stand up export control systems in their nation. And our joking tagline in those days was building bureaucracies one country at a time. But in 2008, the two principals of CTP asked me if I would stand up a consulting practice that would help U.S. exporters comply with our regulations. And I said, as I always do, sure. And then gradually, I just sort of we specialized first in what's called classification, which I'll talk about quite a bit soon. But gradually, as people they asked us for this, can you do this? Can you help with this? We expanded our list of services quite dramatically, and then we got into import compliance as well. So it's been quite a growth and involvement since 2008 till today, and I'm surrounded by a team of good people, and so that's the export compliance part of me. The rest is probably more interesting, but I won't delve into it right now because we'll keep this focused.
Yeah, excellent. All right. So, Rick, typically with these interviews, I ask about times and contracts and about NCMA. So, we're going to do things just a little bit different because you're not a quote unquote contracts person, per se. You are on the export control side. So, what got you into export control?
Well, it's a bit of a strange story. I was
Those are the best
consulting.
kinds of stories. Those and long
I,
stories.
in the 90s, I in the 80s and 90s, I started several small businesses, and then I started writing business plans and financial models for all kinds of startups. And I was playing hockey. I'm a Canuck. I'm a dual citizen, but I'm a Canuck. So I was playing hockey, and one of the guys with me says, "Oh, can you write me a business plan for something in Africa and something in Eastern Europe?" And I said, "Sure, sure." And then the next request was, "Can you organize a conference in the Balkans, in Tbilisi, Georgia?" And the topic was export control. And so I did this multilateral conference with all of Central Asia, and it went very well. And that just led from one thing to the next. Or the topic of it was export control, non-proliferation, and they liked how I did that, and I found the topic quite interesting. And so I just sort of evolved into it. And at the time, I had a couple of little kids, so it was nice to have health insurance as opposed to being a freelancer. So that's that combination of factors drew me into it.
Excellent. So, specifically regarding export control, what is something about export control that you really like? Like the typical way I ask this is what's something in contracts that you usually like? And because contracts is such a broad field, like right, like I could say subcontracts and negotiation, but for export control, it's definitely a big area considering you get to touch literally the entire world with what you're doing. So what's something that you really like about it?
Well, you sort of touched on it there. Part of it is that it does involve the entire world. I mean, on any given day, I can be dealing with, airplanes to one country and biotech to another country and space launch vehicles, from here in the United States and cross country collaborations. And so the range of the products is dramatic. They tend to skew on the side of most of more sensitive, more high tech, because that's where the government wants to maintain some level of security. Well, the world does, not just the U.S. government. The world wants to maintain security. So we see the high tech stuff in all these different industries, and we see all kinds of configurations from startups to multinationals. So that also keeps it interesting. And so I think just the sheer diversity of the work is is what keeps me, going every day. I mean, sometimes we kind of pinch ourselves, like, wow, that was a really interesting call, And so I mean, it's not we're not building widgets, that's for sure.
All right. So my next question is typically about NCMA. So since again, not a contracts person, I got a new off the cuff question before we get into the actual webinar piece. What has been either your favorite client, if you can talk to them about it, or what's been your favorite country to work with when it comes to what you do specifically?
Oh gosh, country can't really say. I don't really have a preference. I mean, we're sort of agnostic. We work with anybody. The companies themselves, we don't talk about our companies by name because not that it's secret to talk about but we sign NDAs on everything, and
Of
we just
course.
generally keep that pretty close to the vest. But the one I guess the category I like is we both small and large companies. We help them understand the initial challenge, right? They come to us
Yep.
usually in a panic of some sort, and we sort of talk them down. We solve the original problem, and then we kind of morph them towards a compliant status, like like not just one of ad hoc, scrambling solutions, but really comprehensive solution that addresses all their needs, which we then we put into policies and procedures, and then we train their staff, and then they then generally come back to us, repeatedly over the months and years to do more licenses or more training or whatever it is they need. Or can you help us with tariff codes? Or can you help us with supply chain? And so the to growing those ongoing relationships and taking them from chaos to compliance. So that's sort of a generic definition of my favorite client is when you really feel like you're doing providing a solution that has staying power.
I love that. All right. So let's shift gears to the webinar. So the
Okay.
topic of this webinar is fundamentals of US export controls. What
Right.
can people expect to learn during this event? Don't give it all away, but what are maybe some of the bullet points that people that are watching this go, okay, I like the speaker. I'm really interested in what he's to talk about. So just give us like the bullet points of what people can expect to learn.
Well, the big picture is well, what they're going to learn is the big picture because a lot of people really have no concept of what expo control is. But in the course of that hour, I'm going to give them a pretty good framework understanding of expo controls and how it manifests in the United States in particular, because there's three areas of expo control generally speaking. There's the military stuff controlled by the State Department under the ITAR, International Traffic in Arms Regulations. That's a whole other thing. It's strict but simple. And then there is over at the Department of Commerce, the Export Administration Regulations, which handle the commercial. Well, actually, the term is dual use, commercial/military, because some items are over there on the commerce list, and they have regulations. The Export Administration Regulations, better known as EAR, and they have their own control list, paralleling the military list. Okay, so those are the first two things, areas. And then the third area is sanctions and embargoes and denied parties. They're that can localized under OFAC at the Department of Treasury, and especially right now, there's a lot of talk about sanctions and embargoes and denied parties. So that's different because it's not on the product or service itself; it is on the destination, on the country or the company or the individual. So that's the three things. So I'm going to give them a good understanding of those three areas, and then the specific hoops that the government wants you to jump through, and I'm going to help them understand what those hoops are and how they can best navigate those. And the third jurisdiction is quite different than the first two. It's localized at the Department of Treasury, Office of Foreign Assets Control in particular, but it's the list of sanctioned and embargoed countries and denied parties. And that's so it could be countries or companies or individuals. And the reason this is different, it's not based on the product or service itself, like the first two, the State Department military controls and the dual use controls of the Commerce Department. It focuses on the destination country, company, or individual, because you don't want to be dealing with a known bad guy, or even an unknown bad guy. And there's screening methods to make sure that you verify that everybody you're dealing with, actually, it could be employees, it could be your clients, it could be your freight forwarders, it could be your lawyers, it could be anybody you interact with. You should screen them, international dealings, screen them to make sure they're not inadvertently showing up on some kind of hit list. It's really one of my favorite lines, and I'll say it probably a couple of times in this call, is proactive beats reactive, right? So screening is getting ahead of the problem. Don't get into a deal with someone that is going to just cast a lot of bad shade on you or side splatter. That's not worth it. In fact, it could be a really problematic entanglement. All right, so that's the third aspect of what they'll understand. And then what do they need to do in order to abide by these regulations? Well, fortunately, both the military controls and dual use controls, they still want you to jump through more or less the same hoops, right? There's a variety of things, classification and licensing and screening. I just mentioned record keeping, data security, and all these are they have to be specific to the companies. So we have templates to help them develop these procedures, but we have to make them real for that company, for their org chart, for their products, their markets, and to make sure that they're applicable, right? And
Yep.
so we do these customization process, and we follow it by training. And this is all part of this. What I mentioned earlier is taking them from ad hoc to systematic compliance is the objective. So that's what they'll learn in this hour, speaking in considerably more detail than I have right now in a 5-minute summary.
Sounds good to me. Is there anything else that you want to share?
I'd say repeat the message that it's better to be proactive than reactive. And export control seems sort of daunting, but when you get right into it, it actually, there's some logic to it. And once you've worked with us a little bit and you've seen it, you sort of understand what the expectations are and what the solutions are. And it turns out it's just it's another SOP. Like, you've got SOPs in several different parts of your company, and the objective is not to layer on another level of bureaucracy. It's just to give you a few more check marks in a process in the respective departments. And it could be in R&D, it could be in HR, it could be in legal, it could be in order processing. In fact, it's likely in all of those. And so you just need to get the proper procedure in place at those respective things, so those people understand what they need to do, when they need to do it, what it's going to look like, and where they send it. So it's just building fundamental understandings, and then keeping them moving over time, adapting as needed to changes. That's our objective.
I love it. Well, Rick, thank you for taking the time. Greatly appreciate it. Folks, the event is Fundamentals of U.S. Export Controls. It is going to be Wednesday, April 16th. The webinar room is going to open at 11:55 a.m. The webinar will start at noon Eastern. Rick, thank you so much. Looking forward to the webinar.
I'm looking forward to it as well. Thanks very much, Adam.
Thanks, Rick.